Welcome and thank you for watching Listen and Engage MSA Speaker Series Part 2, Coming Out Stories in the LGBT plus community. I am Katarina and I am on the Board of Directors for your Mohawk Students Association. The Mohawk Students Association is designed for and led by students. Our goal is to make Mohawk College a better place by providing high-quality services, supports, and resources to help students succeed academically and socially. Today we are joined by YouTuber Alayna Joy, who has many amazing stories and videos of her journey for you to view online. But first, we'd like to welcome our host. Farah Safia Khan is a queer Muslim femme who has spent 2 decades raising awareness about the intersections of gender-based violence and equity through education, art creation, and advocacy. She is the founder of Possibility Seeds, a member of the Government of Canada's Federal Strategy Against Gender-Based Violence Advisory Council, and co-director of Courage to Act, the first national project of its kind to address and prevent gender-based violence on post-secondary campuses in Canada. Her current self-care practice is making forts with her toddler and wife. Please welcome Farah Khan.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and talking about coming out and all things queer. And so we have an amazing person that we get to talk to today who's a YouTube host, is doing so much work in community, amazing things around this community conversation. And so I'm just going to introduce her right now. And her name's Alayna Joy, and she's an LGBTQ Canadian content creator who brings her frank and funny perspectives to a wide range of topics online, with sexuality, mental health, wellness being her specialties. While she's not creating content online, she's teaching mindfulness, compassion, and inclusion workshops and conventions in schools across North America. We are so excited to be with her today. And she's really going to be an opportunity for us to really talk about what it means to be coming out, what does it mean afterwards, what are all the kind of labels and conversations that we're having, and ways that we can take care of ourselves. So let's welcome her. Hi.
Oh, hi, Farah.
Hi, I'm so excited to see you. And you're in the UK right now.
Yes, that's a whole different story. But yes, I am in the UK, coming to you live.
That's really exciting. And we're glad you're still awake because I know the time changes always messes us up, but we're super happy you're here. And we're going to be talking about coming out, which I'm really excited about. And I follow you on all your social media, and it's really exciting to see the stories that are coming out right now. We're going to have some rapid fire questions first. So can you tell me your first childhood crush?
Oh my God, Kristen Stewart.
Yes.
That's a classic, right?
Yeah, the Rolling Stone video, it's enough to make every girl like want to be her best friend and more.
I thought when I was younger, I didn't understand that what I had on her was a crush. Like I thought, I used to have this picture of her up in my bedroom, like when I was young, pre-Twilight. I had this picture of her, didn't know who she was. And like, I would look at it and my friends would come over and I would be like, is this not the most beautiful woman you've ever seen in your life? Like, look at this photo. And they're like, yeah, Alayna, it's a great photo. And I'm like, no, but like, she's stunning. She's gorgeous. She's beautiful. She's everything. Didn't realize I had a crush on Kristen Stewart. In retrospect, it's blatantly obvious.
It's so funny that we don't remember those things, what they are and then what they are. So I remember writing an email to my boyfriend when I was in high school after going to the Anya Franco concert, which is like this full-time lesbian singer, and saying to him, like, every woman there was so beautiful and I wanted to hug them all. And, you know, I just wanted to stay in the basking of the joy of women, and like this long email about how much I love all the women around me, not realizing that I was a flaming homo. So yeah, I hear you. It's
basking in the joy of women. Like, can that be, like, I need that on a t-shirt. Basking in the joy of women.
That's a wedding invitation. What's one word to describe you in high school?
One word to describe me in high school? This is like, can I say a little phrase? I would say fake it till you make it. I just like went in guns a-blazing and just tried to act like I had my life together when I absolutely did not.
But I think that's how a lot of us are dealing with it. I can imagine a lot of people are watching right now. If you're in school, you're kind of feeling like, okay, I got this, but also don't got this. And I think that's okay too. And that's one thing I love about your YouTube is that you're trying to always figure out things and you don't always know everything that's happening.
Absolutely. It's that's one thing about having a YouTube channel for almost a decade. Other stuff shows up. The whole journey is there from start to finish. What would you describe yourself? What would be one word you would use for high school?
Oh my gosh, super awkward, just super awkward. I was really awkward. But, you know, I had the really thick glasses and I was just like really like awkward and, you know, fumbling around and figuring it out. But I think at the time, what now I know is, which was awkwardness, was really just a really awesome part of who I was, you know? Like the things that you found awkward or things you found uncomfortable about were things that actually made you really great.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that.
Okay. What was the feeling the first time that you held a woman's hand?
Okay. So besides just like friend holding hand and those kinds of things, the first memory I have of very clearly holding a woman's hand was my best friend, Kristen, when I went to my first ever Pride. And this was after I came out. I had never been to a Pride before because I was just terrified of anybody knowing that I was queer in any way. And we did a march together, and she held my hand while we were on this march, and I felt euphoric because I felt like I was really being seen in a way that I hadn't before. We can get into this when we talk about the coming out stories, but I was in a relationship with a man at the time, and so this public display of, you know, camaraderie, affection, love between two women, euphoric. I felt euphoric.
Yeah, it's sometimes one of the most beautiful things that you can do is just holding someone's hand. And we, you know, people talk about the first kiss, but I think the first time we hold somebody's hand is actually like this really special moment. Yeah. And it's happened to you, right?
Yeah.
Like I love Moonlight. Moonlight has a scene where he's holding his crush, his hand right there, like on the beach, and like you're just like, it's too much.
Yeah. That's a movie. If any of you watching haven't seen Moonlight.
Yeah. I think this whole conversation could just be about us talking about queer movies because that's one of my other favorite conversations. Now, what about cats or more cats? Do you like one cat or multiple cats?
Yeah, more cats. So at one point I had 8 cats. So I am a more cats.
Did you date at that time?
No, this was me and my ex-partner. We fostered cats. So we fostered a pregnant cat. We had our own cat, and then pregnant cat had 6 kittens. We now had 8 cats.
Okay, that's a level. That is a level.
And I didn't know that I was gay at the time. How did I not know? Right? How did I not know?
That's a hella gay thing to have that many
red flags.
Rainbow flags, right? Okay. So coming out is super personal. Sometimes it's very public, and sometimes it's way more complicated than just saying like, I'm here, I'm queer, we're done, we're good.
Yes.
Right? And so is there something in terms of your own experience, like what was it kind of the catalyst for you? And then what was a place where you're just like, okay, I am queer, or I don't know if you identify as queer, so is it lesbian, or how do you identify in this moment, in this second?
Yeah, so this moment, this second, I love queer. I love the fluidity that the word queer allows for. I love how inclusive it is. I love the idea of taking it back. So queer is A-okay with me, lesbian, gay, homo, any of those work. In terms of coming out moments, so my coming out story, my coming out experience is not so straightforward, as you as you could say. I've come out a few times. So basically, I grew up in a really small, conservative, religious town, rural Manitoba, and the only type of queerness that I knew about or learned about growing up was, first of all, between 2 men, and second of all, we only learned about it or heard about it in the context of it being a sin, or in the context of it being this like negative, shameful thing. So I didn't even know women could be gay until I learned Ellen DeGeneres was gay. And I have this memory of like, I remember where I was when I found out Ellen DeGeneres was gay, because I was like, wait a minute, a woman can be gay? I didn't know that. But I thought, definitely not me, definitely can't be, not me, not gay me, because I like boys, I have crushes on boys, I'm I date boys, all these things. I'm just like the other girls. Thinking that all the other girls also felt the same way that I did about the other girls. I thought that that was just like, you know, what close friends feel like when you have these feelings. Then I learned the term bisexual, which I learned on YouTube when I was like 18, 19, and something clicked into place where I was like, oh, okay, so I must be bi. That's got to be what this is. I have these feelings for women, but I also have all of these experiences and these relationships with men. Bisexuality is the one. It fits. So I came out to some close friends, and that was great. And I came out to my partner at the time, who was male. That went well as also. And then I'm going to say about 5 years ago, I saw a YouTube video, a coming out story by someone named Ingrid Nilsson. Any of you who are familiar with YouTube might recognize that name. Her coming out video, it made waves, right? Because she was somebody who had always been in relationships with men publicly. She was quite feminine presenting. She made videos, lifestyle videos about makeup and just the things that you wouldn't stereotypically think gay. And she came out as gay. And I remember seeing her video and just absolutely breaking down. I was already out publicly, or sorry. There's a twist and turns. I was out to my friends at this point, and I broke down to my boyfriend. And on the story that I told originally on the internet was that I broke down to him and I said, you know, I'm bi, and this is something I need to talk about. I've been repressing it for so long. And he was okay with that, and that was all wonderful. But what really happened was I broke down and I said to my boyfriend at the time, look, I think I'm gay. And we had this conversation where we essentially rationalized how I couldn't be gay. I was definitely still bi, and it was just the fact that I hadn't talked about it publicly that was making me think that I was, you know, more queer than I had originally thought. So I came out to my family, I came out to the internet as bi, felt great about that. Fast forward to quarantine, and, you know, many things came together for me to realize that I actually was right all those years ago, and I am actually gay, not bi, and had to come out all over again. And here we are.
The rationalization piece is so big, right?
Yeah, I know. There's a lot to unpack in all of those different moments, but the rationalization was interesting because it was us sitting down. So I said to him, hey, you know, I'm crying, I'm having this breakdown. And I said, I think I'm gay. And he goes, he's such a sweetheart. He's such a wonderful person. He goes, okay, so does that mean that you don't love me anymore, or you don't want to be with me? And I was like, no, I love you. And he's like, okay, so do you want to break up? Like this, you don't want to be in this relationship is what you're telling me. I was like, no, I want to be together. And that was where we then were like, oh, haha, then I can't be gay because I love this person and I want to be with this person. And that was the catalyst. Now, you know, maybe 5-6 months ago at this point, where I had one of these panics where I'm having my same fear that, I think I'm actually gay. And then I would use that rationalization to talk myself down, right? Like I would use that to say, I would talk myself through it by saying, well, no, you love your partner, you want to be with him, you can't be gay. And then I realized, I can still love this person and be gay. Both of those things could be true. And that was my moment of like really knowing that I was gay.
And I think that coming out part about coming out to yourself is the first thing, right? Because sometimes people talk about like, when did you come out to your friends or this? And I'm like, when did I come out to myself? Like, when did I tell myself and really be okay with it? That like, I really want to like make out with girls. I want to hang out with girls. I want to be with women, or I'm queer. I want to be with like trans people. Like, wherever you are in this, like that's where you're at. And I really love that you kind of had to do that process for yourself, talk to other people, but it was really about you telling yourself.
Absolutely. What was that moment for you? Coming up to yourself?
Well, so when I was in high school, I wanted to hold my best friend's hand, Christina Dance. I wanted to hold her hand. And so we were in the library and we held each other's hands, and a guy from my high school saw us. And I went to Catholic school. My family's Catholic and Muslim. So you can imagine like religious guilt when you talk about that. That's something I think about too. And I never saw any queer femme people. I thought that being queer was like a buzz cut white woman in overalls. Like that's the stereotypes, right? And so I didn't see any queer femme, let alone Muslim. And so him and the football team, him and the hockey and football team came and beat up my friends and I the day after. And when I went home, my family was like, well, you're not gay. And so like, why did they do this? And I was like, right, like I'm not gay. I just really want to hold my friend Christina Dance's hand. And I maybe want to like snuggle with her in bed. But like,
yeah, not a gay thing.
No
homo.
No homo. Yeah, like no cat. Like it's good. You know, and like it took me, but then I dated my best friend when we were like 18. We started dating, and like I dated women, but I also dated men because my family was so religious. The end goal was always to marry a man because that's what my family wanted. And that's what my family needed. And so I think for me, it was like, okay, I'll like, I love women, but I got to do this thing because that's what my family needed. And it came up to the time where like I was with a guy, we were supposed to get married. We're on that trajectory. And I met somebody who like blew my world open, who was another queer Muslim. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm queer and I want to just be with women. And if it meant losing people, and I lost a lot of people, it didn't matter because my truth was more important than their need for me to be in this box. And I think that's the thing too. It's so hard to come out.
That it's beautiful how our stories are so unique. Everybody's story is so unique, but there are so many shared elements. Like so many of the things that you just spoke about, I'm like, I understand. I had that exact same experience. And it's so, like you said, it's so much about deciding and recognizing that you are allowed and you deserve to live the life that's most authentic to you. And the people who might disagree, you might lose people, but it's your truth, you know, it's your life, it's your happiness, and you deserve that.
Yeah, and like pleasure, right? Like I think we're told that pleasure is only this one way, or like I remember these letters, like my mom would send me these letters being like, now you're never gonna have the joy in your life of being with like a family and like have children or get married and all those things. And like,
are you like, look at me now, Mom?
Like, we were at the wedding, you know, and like they were upset at that wedding. They were not happy. My parents took my head table, but like, you know, we're fine. But like, you know, I'm married and I have a child now and I'm really happy. But that doesn't mean that if you're queer, you have to have a child and follow this like heterosexual way of being either. Like that's what I kind of love about being queer. You get to decide.
You get to build your own box. You get to build your own roadmap. Like, yeah. And that's to touch on something, compulsory heterosexuality, this idea that all that we're shown in the media, all that we're taught, all that we're told is okay is being straight, being cis, and like that's man, woman, that's the only way to do things. That played such a role in me taking this long to understand my real identity and what brings me pleasure. A huge thing that I found confusing, or a huge roadblock in me understanding understanding this about myself, was that I've discovered that I was confusing enjoying being desired as experiencing desire myself. So that's where I always got, whenever I would think, oh no, I think I'm gay, I was like, well, no, I can't be gay because I have enjoyed being with men. I can't be gay. But it was like, now I realize, oh no, I enjoyed the feeling of being desired, and I mistook that for experiencing my own desire. And then, like you said, when I met a queer person who blew my world wide open, I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to experience desire. This is what, you know, butterflies feel like. I'm having all of these emotions that I've just never experienced before. I thought I was aromantic.
Oh.
I thought I was just aromantic. I just didn't experience romantic attraction. I just didn't, instead of thinking, oh, I just don't experience these things with men, I thought I just don't experience them all together because I think that was easier.
And it's wild, I think, when you are femme presenting, or if you have any kind of long hair, that like that's enough femme presenting, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, we're on the spectrum, but when you're femme presenting, there's this idea that your desirability is all about men. Like, you know, I've had people like literally say to my wife, it's such a waste of the pretty. Like, Farah is so feminine. You know, it's a waste of the pretty for her to be gay. And my wife is always like, it's not wasted on me, you know? And that's
exactly.
Yeah. And so I think it's like pushing against patriarchy a lot or pushing against these like sexist ideas of ownership of women's bodies, women's sexuality, why we're here, because the only time you see lesbians sometimes in the media back in the day was when we were the desire, like, you know, men would be like, I want to make a sandwich, or like in a porn, and like long nails, which I'm like, how? The long nails, I don't know how.
Clearly a queer person did not write that scene.
Like clip them before. But like, yeah, I think there's a whole thing where we're not having to be able to see ourselves really. And so then how do you envision yourself if you don't see yourself? That's why I think you're doing amazing work as a YouTuber, because people then get to see themselves. Do you get a lot of messages from young women that are like, oh my God, I never knew, and now hearing this from you, this is clicking for me?
Yes. So a big part, after I came out publicly as bi, a huge part of my platform was me doing my best to be visible as a bisexual woman in a relationship with a man, and the validity of bisexuality no matter who you're dating, right? And this idea of a straight passing relationship, bi erasure, all of that was a really big part of my platform. And I got a lot of messages from women in a similar situation, women who are bi, who a really common one was them saying that they had never had an experience with a woman. They'd been with a man their entire life, or only had been with men, and they were afraid that they weren't allowed to identify as bi, all of these things. And it was basically just me saying, no, if you think you're bi enough, like you're valid, welcome, come on in, you're queer, good job, you know, you want a hug? And so that was this beautiful thing. And it was also a terrifying piece when I realized, I'm not actually bi, I'm gay. I was so afraid that I was now going to contribute to these negative stereotypes and contribute to, you know, just being another person who fits these negative myths. But in coming out again and in sharing this story, sharing the updated story, I'm getting inundated with messages from queer people who, again, are sharing this experience. The experience of being in a long-term relationship, being as a woman in a long-term relationship with a man, realizing that they're gay, and needing to basically turn their entire lives upside down. And I get people sharing with me a lot that content like that and visibility like that helps them to feel less alone, which is this like wonderful, beautiful thing. What a lot of people don't realize is that when I get these messages, I feel less alone. You know, like you sharing your story just now with me and expressing that you were in relationships with men and kind of figuring it out, and then you met this person and all these things. When we see our experiences mirrored any type of way, that representation, it's like, it feels like a hug, right? So when I get the messages from folks, I feel elated that I'm honored that I'm a part of their story, or that I help them feel less alone. But I also just want to say this big thank you, because they do the same for me.
Yeah, it makes such a big difference to see people when they respond back to you. You're like, oh, okay, this is helpful, but also there's more of us, right? When I get emails from like queer Muslims that are like, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only unicorn. I think that's oftentimes what we're told to feel or made to feel. And I think that's why queer media, when we see more of it now, like every time I see queer characters on TV, I get really excited.
Oh, me too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And bisexuality, there's so many stereotypes of bisexuality, and you've talked about it a little bit here. And then I know on your videos, I see them as well. Can you share a little bit about some of the ways we can challenge bisexuality stereotypes?
I think we just, like, bisexual folks are valid and real, and I think that the best way that we can challenge stereotypes is let them in to the community. Like, we've got to stop this gatekeeping of like, who's queer enough, or who, or how, what are the boxes you have to tick in order to be queer, or having spaces where bi folks are just as welcome, just as queer as gay folks, or whatever, any other label. Something that always really irked me when I identified as bi, and still irks me to this day when I see it for other bi folks, is this idea that bi folks, that bisexuality is like 50-50. Like, there's I used to get this question when I would do interviews where people would ask me, okay, well, what's your percentage, right? Like, percentage men, percentage women, like, how bi are you? How this? And I would always say, I'm not 50-50, I'm 100-100, right? Or like, it's whoever my partner is, I'm 100% for that person. It's not this idea that you're only half straight and half gay. It's just, we need to throw that model out.
Right.
I think 100%. But I think as folks who don't identify as bi, who are a part of the community, we just need to stop with the, well, you're dating a man, well, have you ever slept with a woman? Any of this feeling like we are owed an explanation or receipts or proof of somebody's bi-ness, we need to toss that in the garbage.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And we see that like on TikTok right now, there's such a proliferation of talking about like lesbian TikTok is really big and queer TikTok is really big. But on it, there's like kind of aesthetic that kind of builds out of it. And it's a certain aesthetic I still feel is very white sometimes, and is very like, you have to have a flowered shirt, you know, you have to have like chains, like there's a very much of an aesthetic.
Uh-huh.
And like, I think what's challenging gatekeeping as a queer person of color is when I step into those spaces, sometimes I'm like, oh, this isn't me. Does that mean I'm not queer? And so the gatekeeping that you're talking about is something not only for bisexuals, but in the way we talk about race and the way we talk about binaries too, right? Like gender non-binary people, trans folks are queer and they are part of our community. And we have to not just make this binary of like, either you like men or women. There's actually a whole spectrum, right?
Absolutely. And this is a whole other conversation, but that's one of the, it ties into labels, right? Even the label, that's why I like the label queer, right? Because it feels inclusive. It allows for all sorts of gender identities, all sorts of different types of attraction, right? Because God, sexuality can be confusing. It can be so confusing. So yeah, that's why I like the word queer.
I love the word queer too. I think it allows me to also not erase my history. And sometimes there's this idea when you come out that you have to erase who you dated before, that those relationships weren't valid, or somehow it was just like a holding deck before you're with, you know, and I've been with trans people, I've been with cis people, I've been with men, women, and those relationships are valid and just as important.
Absolutely. And this is the piece that for me, you know, was the catalyst for my coming out to myself moment. But I really want to drive that home, that I loved my partner. I loved him. I truly did. And I still love him, you know, and just because our relationship is now over, our romantic relationship, it doesn't mean that it wasn't, you know, 7 formative years of my life. Like, it doesn't mean that he now no longer matters or our relationship doesn't matter. And so I think that's a really important point too.
Yeah. And I don't think you have to erase that relationship just because now you're feeling like all the things for women. And, you know, I think sometimes too, when we talk about representation and these stereotypes, there's also stereotypes that media kind of generates about our community. So most stories about queer folks always ends with tragedy oftentimes, or it's like, there's this tremendous breakup, or they were separated, or, you know, they had the coming out. So we never get to see queer love stories, except like Schitt's Creek, I think was one of the first, you know, shows that we saw a queer couple that was just like darn happy in this like normal relationship. So, you know, I always think about Vivek Shraya's work, who's a trans artist in Canada, who's done an amazing work around visibility and just an amazing artist. And she has this book and a film called What I Love About Being Queer. And I love that question. So what's 2 things that you love about being queer?
Only 2? I mean, I think first and foremost is just, I am, for the first time truly in my life, experiencing these, it feels like I'm like a teen again at this point, right? And so many of us queer folks have this experience where it feels like you're going through like a second adolescence, right? But like this feeling of the pleasure that you talked about, these feelings of joy and butterflies and the excitement and the exploration. Something that I love about being queer is this sense of exploring, and I don't think that will ever fade, because there's no real script, right? So we get to make our own. And I would say that's my second thing that I love about being queer, is I feel like my queerness spreads into my entire life. It's like I've already broken the expectation in this one huge way, right? The societal expectation that I'm gonna be with a man and all this, compulsive heterosexuality. And now that I've broken that, it's almost like it's opened the door for me to break those norms in other ways. So whether that's exploring my fashion, the clothes that I wear, the things that I like to do in my spare time, politics, any of that, I feel like I'm queerifying more in my life than just my relationships, and I absolutely love it. Oh, and I mean, this is 3, but the community. I just love being a part of the queer community. It's such a beautiful place and full of so many interesting, incredible people.
Yeah, the community makes a huge difference. And there's lots of different communities that people can pop into, which I think is important for folks to know. Like, I think what's nice about the queer community is that there's not one. So there's, if there's somebody that's going to like the things that you like, and you're going to feel home.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, what you raised around this idea of like queerifying all parts of our lives, it's kind of nice because nobody has expectations of you sometimes after you come out, because they're like, oh, well, she's not going to get married. She's not going to,
Yeah.
she's not going to do the heteronormative thing. So I guess that's just what she does now, all these different things. So it's like, yes, I will move to the UK. Yes, I will do all the things. Maybe I will question that. And like, I think too about it, what you named is like, what I love about being queer. I think I was in the book with that Vivek did, and I said like leather shorts, my community, and being able to think differently even about sex, like this idea that I think sometimes we're told not to talk about sex at all as queers because we're supposed to be like, less, there's other things, but I'm like, it's also that too. And this idea, the first time that I was with a woman, I remember saying to her, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. She's like, I don't know either, but I know what I like. And that was like a really cool thing where I was able to, for the first time, and I think that should be in all relationships, not just in queer relationships, but this thing where you can say, I don't know what I'm doing, but let's figure this out together. And I wish that was in all relationships. But I think in queer relationships, because you're kind of making a map that you never saw existed, you kind of think that you invent things, which is kind of exciting too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's a big part of like when I was talking about, pleasure and joy and this exploration, there's no script for us, right? So we get to make it ourselves, and we get to figure it out as we go. And there's a type that requires a type of communication that isn't always expected or normalized in non-queer relationships, right? But I agree with you 100% that I wish it was. I wish the straights could have a bit more queer sex.
Well, I think they can, right? And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of neat part around it. I think queerifying things means that everybody benefits. And so when we say that men can wear makeup, it's not just for queer men. Like, I think that all men can wear makeup. I think all men can wear heels. I want my son to grow up wearing tutus if he wants to, and he may just really like women, which is fine, So I think that's a kind of neat thing where we're seeing, I don't want to mainstream queer in the way that we stop enjoying the gorgeousness of the community, but I also think when you come out, you get to kind of question things, and I hope everybody kind of questions those things.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why conversations like this are so important, right? Because I don't want queer media. I don't want queer discussions. I don't want queer YouTube, queer TikTok, queer books. I don't want it just for the queer community, right? Mm-hmm. We want this is going to, like you said, benefit everybody. When we break down norms and expectations and gender roles, all of those things, it benefits everybody, because we should all be able to make choices that are best for us, not just choices based on the expectation of the larger society.
And that expectation, so when you came out, there's expectations obviously from like the larger community because you are a personality in the larger community, but what about your family and friends? Like, how did they react when you came out, and were they supportive, or how did that play out with your family?
Yeah, so I am incredibly lucky. I had a very positive experience coming out. The first time when I came out as bi, my mom responded by saying that she didn't know why, but she wasn't surprised, which I actually found really validating. I know some folks that's not validating for everybody, but for my personal experience, her saying that she wasn't, it didn't surprise her, I found that comforting. My dad my dad asked me if that meant that I was going to start wearing pants all the time now, like Ellen. And at the time I was like, no, definitely not. No, I'll just still love skirts and dresses every day. And I was wrong. I wear pants all the time. Sorry, Dad. Now this second time when I came out again as gay, it's interesting because it was such a non-issue that we almost like brushed right past it, and they just wanted to know about my relationship at the time because I was engaged. I was engaged to a man. And I called them up one day and I'm just like, oops, I made an oopsie. And so they had a lot of questions about my relationship and whether that meant there was still going to be a wedding and all of these things, to the point where then I had to, and I was like, well, no, we're breaking up, I'm gay. Circled back at the end of the conversation, I was just like, so to be clear, the gay thing, do we have any comments on that? And they were like, oh no, yeah, of course, like that's all great. I'm grateful for that experience, because I know that that's not the experience for everybody. But I also think it's an important experience to still share, because like you touched on earlier, often the stories that we're told are the worst stories. We're served the rejection and the shame and these things. So I think, that's why I like to share also that there are families and friends and there are folks out there who are wonderful and accepting. And this is where the idea of chosen family comes in, right? Like, even if your family or your people, maybe you're coming up against some disagreement or adversity, there are people out there who will love you and support you and accept you just the way that you are.
Yeah, and it's committing to yourself when you come out that you'll find those people, I think.
Yeah.
I know for myself, when I came out, it was multiple times, as we all do, but when I came out first to my dad stopped talking to me, and my brother stopped talking to me for 3 or 4 years. And then my dad and I ended up meeting up in India and went on a trip together. And he just was like, we're just not going to talk about it. And for him, that was like how he dealt with it. Whereas my mom was like, we'll talk about it. But she would like just send these like messages of being really upset and then go back and forth about it. And my dad also had his own place with it. And I think that's the thing, is that we recognize is that we come out, but so does our family and friends too. They have to come to terms with us being queer. And it messes with them too, because they have these stereotypes of, okay, my kid looks like this, and this is the way my kid will be. It's going to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and it'll be straight. And when you're none of those things, they're like, wait a minute. And so I think for me, that was definitely it. But when I came out a second time, when my wife and I got engaged, it was right around the Pulse shooting, which was a murder in a gay nightclub of over 40 queer people, queer and trans people. And it was really upsetting. And my wife is a politician, so she spoke in the news about it and said, I'm going to introduce everybody to my queer Muslim fiance. And that's when I, really came out in terms of a public way. And of course, the video went all over, and my family saw it, and my dad, my Muslim side of my family, my dad, but they were like, we can't be a part of your life anymore. And so I don't have that side of my family. And then I have my mom, and that side of my family is really supportive, and as they can be. But I was coming to terms with the fact that there'd be some losses if I came out. And that doesn't mean my father doesn't love me, and that doesn't mean my family doesn't love me. They just can't reconcile that. And I hold that really close because sometimes we have this idea that we're unlovable too when we're queer, or that people will stop loving us. And I don't believe actually they stop loving me. I just believe they can't reconcile this publicly. And that's on them. That's their loss. They lose out on so much when they don't love us back. And so it's coming to terms with that and being okay with that was a part of my coming out story, and not feeling that that was a deficit.
And then finding your queer people.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's, we all have such different experiences. And I also want to touch on because I get a lot of questions about like folks saying that they want to come out, but they don't know if they should, or they don't know if they're ready. The number one thing, first and foremost, is make sure that you're safe, right? There's no pressure to come out. You don't owe anybody your coming out. You don't owe anybody your experience. It's on your time. I'm 28. I just came out this year. You know, I just figured it out. I just felt right enough in myself. I felt I had to be okay enough in myself to end this relationship, right? And I wasn't ready to do that until 28 years old, and that's okay.
And I think people are going to come out when they're ready. And I always say it's no one's choice to come out for you. Like when people out other folks, I think that is a form of violence, and it is a form of, it's not okay. And like, you want to come out around your sexuality, your gender, the fact that you like have multiple partners, you know, all the things that you want to do, it's your decision. And it doesn't make you less queer or that you're ashamed of yourself. Like, I think that was something also that, you know, sometimes people be like, oh, like, is it because you're not, you know, feeling good about yourself? Or like my mom was like, is it something that you just like didn't feel good about and that's why you didn't tell us for so long? And I was like, no, it's because you didn't make it safe for me to tell you. And part of it too is that allies need to also like make it safe for us to tell you that we're queer, make it safe for us to tell you that we may have feelings about our gender or sexuality that is different than what the norm is. And if you don't create that, like that nest of care, I don't really want to tell you anything. And I think that's an important piece too. What's besides the advice around the safety piece around coming out, is there one thing that you learned from your coming out that you want other people to know? Because you came out very publicly.
Yes. My self-compassion and mindfulness practices are incredibly important to me. They changed my life back in university with, you know, mental health, which is a whole other conversation. Maybe not. They're actually pretty intertwined. But with coming out specifically, my self-compassion practices, so in just a different way of kind of what we've already been talking about, knowing that I have my own back, knowing that I accept myself, knowing that other folks' disagreement or opinions aren't my responsibility, and they don't reflect on me, right? Like their shame doesn't have to be my shame. And especially, like I said, I grew up in a very religious, conservative small town. I grew up incredibly religious myself, very involved in the church. I thought, this is why it took me until I was, I guess, 23 to come out the first time to my family, because we all grew up in the church, and I assumed that they held these same beliefs that I had been being taught. I just assumed that they were going to have a different reaction than they did. So for me, being ready to come out really involved sitting down with myself and knowing that I was lovable and beautiful and allowed to be my authentic self, knowing that I couldn't control somebody else's reaction, and that controlling it wasn't my responsibility, and that whatever happened, I was going to have my own back and I was going to find my own people.
Yeah, I love that you say like have your own back, self-compassion around that piece. And the most important thing is like that you're lovable, right? That I deserve to be loved, and I'm lovable with who I am right now, not because I'm going to be something else. Yeah, I think that really makes it, grounds the understanding of coming out, because I think we are told so little about what it means to love ourselves whole, and we need to keep affirming that ourselves. I think that's
like I deserve, oh, sorry.
That's a good post-it note to put on your like mirror, right? Like, I'm lovable.
Yeah, I deserve to be loved. I am lovable, and I deserve to love. right? And that's, as queer people, we are allowed and we deserve, we have a right to love who we love, and who you love in a perfect world includes yourself.
Yes. And I know Katarina's been with us through this, and I know you want to ask us some questions yourself, so she's going to join us now. Hi.
Hi, I just want to say I really loved what you guys were talking about. It's great. But I did have a specific question from the student body. So in 2012, Mohawk established Social Inc., which is a group that's grounded in human rights, and it promotes inclusion and eliminating discrimination. This group also hosts and facilitates events across all campuses. So what advice can you give to students who are aware of such groups and may want to engage, but are reluctant to take the first step?
Do you want to go?
Sure. I think personally, I'm like, just go for it, right? Back to my high school phrase of who I was, fake it till you make it. I think that for me, with YouTube, I really wanted to be a part of the queer community on YouTube. Like, I would see this group of queer folks who were living their lives, and I just wanted to be a part of it, but I was afraid of rejection, right? Or I was afraid that I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't queer enough. And I'm going to reiterate what I said at the beginning. You are queer enough. You don't need to be anything other than who you are. And if you're searching for that community, if you're searching for your people, what better place to start than a group like that?
I think groups like that are so exciting because they're an opportunity for you to test out ideas. So you can create programming where you're like, I'm going to invite that person I really think does amazing work in the community to talk to us so I can learn from them. Or it may be an opportunity for you to actually meet other queer folks. Because I don't know about you, but I didn't meet my queer community on YouTube, obviously, but I started a queer Muslim group through my university, and it was a way actually for me to meet other queer Muslims. And it was so exciting because I was like, oh, I'm not the only one here. There's people that are interested in the same social justice things that I am, and they want to actually create change. And change can be conversations are change, right? It doesn't have to be like petitioning, protest, everything, which are super important and wonderful, and in this moment, absolutely needed. But it's also about changing yourself and actually getting knowledge yourself. So I think this is a great group and opportunity.
Absolutely. When I moved to Vancouver, a huge step in my queer journey and accepting myself was beginning to volunteer for a queer youth space. And that was my first time outside of YouTube meeting other queer folks in my area. And exactly like you just said, the change in myself was huge. So if you have an opportunity to join a group like this, go for it. It's such a positive, beautiful, it can be such a positive, beautiful experience.
Yeah, because I think being queer, we're so isolated. We're in this moment where, sometimes, especially with COVID, I don't know about other people, but I miss like dirty dance hall parties. I miss like seeing people making out, doing their thing. I miss glitter. I miss, and then I also just miss like the tender moments inside people's houses of potlucks. I miss time with my community and my friends. And so finding online spaces right now are really important. So YouTube is one of them. I think that's what's so great about YouTube. You can kind of like, it feels like a friend, like listening to a friend when I see some of your videos, and I feel like watching other YouTubers. Who do you recommend that people should be watching right now if they want to build community or feel isolated? Who are people that you would say, these are people that are great?
So that's a hard question because there's so many, right? The beautiful thing about YouTube is that there is somebody who shares your experience. So whatever the community that you're searching for, or the story that you want to see reflected, if you put it in that search bar, you're going to find somebody who who speaks to you, So I'm not going to say, you need to watch this person or you need to watch that person, because everybody's experience and lived experience is so different. If you could just go into that YouTube search bar and type in like, queer Muslim woman, lesbian, used to be bisexual, like whatever it is that you're thinking, I'm alone in this, I guarantee you are not. And that's the beautiful thing about YouTube. It's vast.
And I think that's what's so great about it. And I think it's great about this moment in time where people may feel like, okay, Where's My People? And that's a great place. And also TikTok right now is a great opportunity for folks. I can't talk about my obsession with it right now.
If we get into it, it's going to be dangerous. I will recommend one podcast that I found recently because I think it's quite inclusive. It's called We're Having Gay Sex, and it's hilarious. It's two comedians, an AFAB non-binary person and a cis gay woman, and they basically each week they have a different guest on and they talk about the queer sex that they had that week. And it's both hysterical and like heartwarming because you get to hear these different experiences of the different types of queer sex that are out there, different types of queer people, different interactions and relationship styles. And it's really hilarious, especially in COVID, where most of the queer sex that they're having is with themselves. It's just a really that is a recommendation I'll throw out there.
And I think that's a good like moment too. It's like we get to have like self-care and pleasure in this moment, and we need it. What are kind of things that you're doing for self-care under COVID right now? Because you're traveling, you're outside with your family. So what are things you're doing for self-care for your mental health?
Staying connected, right? So that's the beauty of social media, the beauty of all this technology that we have is staying connected, staying on the phone with the people that are closest to me. When it's safe, when I'm able to go somewhere that's, isolated, not around people, getting outside is just huge for me and my mental health. And therapy. If you have therapy available to you, I know that it's not always accessible for everybody. If it is accessible to you and it's something that you've thought about, or maybe you're a bit nervous, but you've wanted to explore therapy. That's a big one for me too.
And I know at Mohawk College, there's therapists, which is really great. And you also, if you're in Ontario, there's the LGBTQ Youth Line, which is a wonderful peer support phone line, which I don't know if other people have called, but what I love about it is that you can call and you have somebody on the line that's been through what you've had. So it could be like a conversation we're having right now. So there's things and in terms of going outside, I find going to see nature, seeing the trees right now, strolling with my son, and finding ways to kind of ground myself that this is not forever.
Absolutely. And again, returning to that mindfulness and self-compassion practice, those are huge.
Yeah. We're ending off. We're going to end off. We're going to be ending this conversation, but I want to say thank you for being a part of this. And your story is so important to me. One of the things that resonated the most was this idea that our self-love and self-compassion is paramount to us, our coming out. And that we love ourselves enough to say that I deserve to be all the things I want to be.
Thanks for having me. This was so fun. It was so great to get to talk to you.
Yeah. This is our first time talking, so this is very exciting for me.
I mean, we might have to continue after the cameras are cut.
I'll send you my favorite TikToks.
Oh, please. I need more friends sending me TikToks in my life.
Oh, that's all I do. That's my love language right now. Is that yours too, Katrina?
Yeah, that's mine. All I do is send TikToks to everyone.
Let's start a group chat.
Yes. I just wanted to hop on and do a quick thank you. So thank you to Alayna and for Farah for joining the MSA today, as well as all the students that had hopped on and tuned in. Thank you for listening. Both of your stories are very inspiring, and I'm glad that I got to listen. And for the students, you can seek more information about our events and services on our website at mohawkstudents.ca. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and thank you to Alayna and Farah for joining us today.
Thank you. See you later. Bye.